welcome everyone to the last day of this fantastic conference. I would like to dedicate my talk to your fearless leader, Alfredo, because he is one of the kindest, most caring conference hosts I have found. And I have met so many interesting and wonderful people here. I am having a terrific time. So thank you so much, Alfredo, for everything. So you saw my title. The question is, why did I use the metaphor of pipe dream? What does pipe dream mean? It means an illusory, a fantastic plan that can't come true. An impossible outcome. It's a very common phrase in the US. Anybody here know its origins? I didn't either, so I looked it up. According to vocabulary.com, this term dates from the 1870s. It originally referred to the strange hallucinatory dreams that opium smokers had, hence a pipe dream. By the 1890s, the term pipe dream was used to describe a hope or ambition that was impossible to attain. So given where I'm speaking, I guess I've chosen that metaphor without knowing it. I hope to convince you today, or at least to spark your interest, in the idea that changing schools is not a pipe dream, but you don't have to take me on faith. Okay, because Roberta Golinkoff says so? No. Let's review the evidence, and in the spirit of playful learning, I'm going to make you do a bit of work first. Talk to the person sitting next to you and decide what's true and what's false. Just talk to the person. Okay, you all have answers now? Okay. Schools teach in the way that brains learn. Raise your hand if you said true. Raise your hand if you said false. False. Today's children will hold one or at most 3 jobs during their lifetime. Raise your hands if you said true. Raise your hands if you said false. 10 jobs, many of which have not been invented yet. No, it's true. Playful learning only works for language and literacy. If that's true, raise your hand. No, it's false. Good. Whoever hollered false. Good. I like that. I come from Brooklyn. Holler. Playful learning positively impacts executive function. Raise your hands if you said true. Absolutely. And the 6 C's refers to cauliflower, carrots, and other vegetables that start with a C. Obviously false. Okay, there are many complaints about education. I see you did well in school, she says, but what real-world skills do you have? He says tests. I can take tests. So how can we address this problem? Well, my talk, I promise you, will not contain lengthy quotes that I will read, but this one I will. The Industrial Revolution has bequeathed us the production line theory of education. At the sound of a bell, you go to one of these rooms together with 30 other kids who are all born in the same year as you. Every hour, some grown-ups walk in and start talking. It's easy to laugh at this model. And almost everyone agrees that no matter its past achievements, it's now bankrupt. So this is what he says is in store for humankind in 2050 unless we make some radical changes. In England, Austria, all these countries, this factory model of education has been called schoolification. Have you heard that term, schoolification? It's pushing down the curriculum into kindergarten and preschool. Many times in the United States, it's requested by parents. They see kids playing and they say, "Where are the worksheets?" As if that's the only way that children learn. We have a big PR problem in the United States, and I suspect we do too as well. The OECD cautions countries need to ensure that curricula are age-appropriate, balancing play, self-regulation, and pre-academic activities, and encourage pedagogical practices that correspond to children's developmental needs. Well, now UNESCO is talking about happy schools. How many of you have heard about that? UNESCO is talking about happy schools. Why? because we have a crisis in mental health among our children, and because schools are making unrealistic demands on young children. Maybe it's time that we started to teach in the way that human brains learn. It's not that hard. The next generation suggests that it's time that we change the way we think about learning and education. Digital and live, in and out of school. We'll talk about that. And the way that parents and policymakers think about the value of an integrated education for their children's learning, but even more importantly, for their children's well-being. It's time to recognize that learning is a surround sound endeavor. It doesn't just take place within the four walls of the school. Okay, so what's the situation in Hong Kong? I hesitate to tell you these things because I am far from an expert, okay? This is what I get from gleaning the web. If you disagree, you can tell me during questions. I'd be happy to learn more. Hong Kong's school system faces significant challenges because there's high levels of stress placed on kids. Do you think that's true? There's an emphasis on rote learning rather than deep understanding. Do you think that's true? Okay. The lack of creativity and critical thinking in the curriculum and an unequal access to education. Do you think these things are likely true? Now, Hong Kong does do well on PISA with 15-year-olds, but you do have to say at what cost. Now, the exercise begins as we rethink what counts as success. What do we think our children should be like when they graduate from school, either here or in the US? I still have to figure out the best way to hold this thing. Okay, I have to stand back here. So it limits me from how much I can move. The traditional way is preparing children in reading, writing, math, and really hitting those basic skills hard. But the 21st century way is supporting children to include content, and more than just this content, but go beyond content, to be happy, healthy thinking, caring, and social. So they become collaborative, creative, competent, and responsible citizens tomorrow. But wait, can we still have a powerful and rigorous curriculum with children and teachers having a good time and succeeding at a high level with this kind of a change in approach? The answer is absolutely. We can nurture the whole child and invite excellent achievement at the same time. We do not have to have children who are losing their hair. I hear about this on the web, about what's going on in the mainland, that children are getting hypertension and actually losing their hair. There's so much pressure on children to pass the exams that they require. So in our books, Becoming Brilliant and Making Schools Work, we ask parents, educators, and policymakers to change the lens on how we define success for children growing up in the 21st century. And achieving that success, I want to argue today, will require nurturing a breadth of skills that we call the 6 C's. And these skills are not just for little kids. We all use them, and we try to improve on them if we're the type of person that the last speaker spoke about yesterday, who are the slow livers. What do you call them? The slow life history people. We're all working to improve these. Collaboration, now these are in developmental order too. Collaboration, which is how we work with people, and we discover collaboration when we're born and we realize that there are others out there with whom we connect. Communication, also very early. Now, content is when we start to learn about the world, and when we go to school, there's a heavy emphasis on content. Critical thinking is when we learn to ask questions, and we should ask lots of questions about the status quo and try to get people thinking about what we want for our children. Creative innovation involves taking old parts and combining them to make new things. Our societies have so many problems that creative innovation is an absolutely essential skill. And all these skills build on the others and continue to move in a dynamic way. And confidence, because there isn't an entrepreneur you talk to, or someone who had a great idea, who didn't fail at first. Now, when we fail, do we fold up our tent and go home? No. We teach children, or we should, to learn from their failures and to keep going. The Brookings in the United States also has a skills for a changing world perspective where we fit right in. Okay, we chose this set because they're grounded in the science of learning, they're malleable and measurable to different degrees, and we all need them. I hate the term soft skills. That's how some of you translated this in your heads. They're not soft skills. These are the skills that make the difference in whether you get that job or you don't. It's no more the case that people who have straight A's are automatically guaranteed a position in society. When they go for an interview, they have to demonstrate that they have these skills as well, even in the tech sector, where there are lots of jobs. Now, we make the argument that in early education, in and out of school, children master the 6 C's in part through playful learning. And we've written a piece with a special focus on China about how this position makes a difference for what goes on in the home and in schools and in cities. And believe it or not, for those of you who are not noticing what's in the journals or reading the newspapers, that's nobody here. That's just my undergraduates. Did you ever ask your undergraduates if they read a newspaper, even online? Mine don't. And I don't know about yours. But play is coming back. It's happening in the news, and it's happening in the journals, and our 6 C's are actually being used in China. That's Japan with the Clientete program, where they have adopted the 6 C's to their culture, which is quite thrilling to us. So today I'm going to talk about defining play, the science of playful learning, and how we can foster play for school readiness, and I'll tell you our equation, which sounds fancy, but it's not. Okay, defining play. Now, my lifelong, it feels like, collaborator, Kathy Hirsch-Pasek, and I thought about, could we distill a set of principles for learning from 50 years of research? Now, we're all trained to be hyper analytic and critical, right? But if you take a step back, there are often principles that you can deduce from the literature, and that's what we tried to do with respect to how children learn. So what is playful learning? It's active, not passive, okay? Now, you and I could learn something if you threw a telephone book at us. They don't exist anymore, right? No more telephone books. But if you gave us some nonsense to memorize, we could do it, because we have metacognition, we can move around what we do. Kids can't do this. Kids need to be active and not passive when learning. The learning needs to be engaging and not distracting, which the current set of apps distracts kids a lot. It needs to be meaningful and not disconnected. That means it needs to link up to their lives and the culture in which they live. It's often better when it's social. Patricia Kuhl at the University of Washington has a paper in which she showed that babies learn phonemes better from other languages if they're hanging around with another baby, better than they do when they're solo. It needs to be iterative, so you can go back and make new hypotheses and study things in more depth rather than unchanged, and it needs to be joyful. Now, when we first started to talk about how schooling needs to be joyful, people would look at us like we were crazy. But it's catching on. It is catching on. guided play has a clear learning goal. So it's a planned play environment. If there are any teachers here, they probably think about this when they set up their classrooms with objects and toys and all kinds of learning opportunities that they can profit from. Susan Newman in the United States set up a writing corner with all kinds of materials, pens, markers, crayons, and all kinds of paper, including newspaper. And these were for preschoolers who came up and said, how do I spell milk? I'm making a shopping list, okay? So there are ways to use the environment that promote children's learning and questioning. It's also adults enhancing children's exploration and learning through co-playing with them and asking open-ended questions. Playful learning can be thought of as falling on a grid. So this is who is directing the play. This is who is initiating it. So in this top quadrant, the child is initiating it and the child is directing it. That's called free play, and that's what got us into trouble when we were little. That's when we're not supervised. I grew up in a 6-story apartment building, and I went up to check out the roof when I was with one of my friends, and somebody told my mother, it's okay. That's how you learn what your limits are and what you can do and you can't do. So free play is still essential. If it's initiated by the child but the adult takes over, see the helicopter reference, this is co-opted play. And research tells us that when parents take over, the kid shuts down. If it's initiated by the adult and the adult directs it, we have what is called direct instruction, which many of our schools at present have, where kids are sitting and people are talking at them. Now, if it's initiated by the adult, because the adult has a curricular goal in mind, but directed by the child, because the adult is following the child's lead, although the adult has a curricular goal in mind, that's guided play. Now, it's not hard to turn free play into guided play. Legos. Kids play with Legos, terrific, right? But if you ask them to have a specific goal in mind, like you say, let's build a castle, then all kinds of things will happen, and we know this from our research with block play. For example, one kid will say, are we going to make a moat? And the other kid says, what's a moat? Right? And this is how peers learn from each other. So if we take free play and turn it into guided play, kids will learn more. So many of you have seen in playgrounds kids climbing up poles like that. And all we have to do to make it guided play is to put numbers on the pole. Why? Because kids love to measure, even if they don't understand the details of number, how far they went compared to their peer. So you get a big conversation about number if you do something as simple as add numbers to the pole. Research suggests that playful learning, obviously I can't review all this work today. You'll have to read the books or do your own literature search. Playful learning enhances social regulation, which we call collaboration, language and literacy, communication, STEM, and other content learning for sure, and hypothesis testing, which is like critical thinking, and even creativity, among others. Okay, so we finished the first part. You should have a sense of what we mean by free versus guided play. And now I want to talk a little bit about the science of playful learning. And I am so preaching to the choir here. Okay. All right. Play and social regulation. Now, we could call these executive function skills. Impulse and emotion control. Self-guidance of thought and behavior. The way little kids talk to themselves, that's what they're doing, controlling themselves. Planning. Self-reliance. Socially responsible behavior. For example, cleaning up and saying you're sorry. My first husband had a hard time with those. attention, working memory, these are all things that are supported through playful learning. So here's a paper on how you can promote executive function skills using a play-based program. And Megan McClelland at Oregon State has written a book about this called Stop, Think, and Act. So one of the things that she does is she makes a little orchestra by giving kids instruments, and she makes one the conductor. So the conductor has a baton. So everybody's playing, they don't know what they're doing, they're just having fun. And when the conductor stops, they have to stop. That is training executive function. Do you guys play Simon Says? Okay, then I don't have to go through my demonstration. And it's embarrassing because most of us don't play as well as 4-year-olds now, right? Okay. So there are all these games that we play as kids, including red light, green light. Do you have that here? Mother, may I? Little steps, big steps. These are executive function games. These are where children practice impulse control, and they're penalized if they fail because they have to go to the back. Okay. Playful learning and cognitive skills, for example, literacy. Okay, Head Start in the United States doesn't always do the best it can for kids. We had a mole, meaning somebody who was teaching children in Head Start, who told us that they insisted that by the end of the first year in Head Start, children learned 15 letters. Which letters? I don't know. And the way they were teaching it in the classroom this woman was in, she was a student teacher, was they would have the kids pronounce the sound A 1,000 times. A, I mean, could you die, right? This is how we teach children the basis for literacy. There's a big controversy in the United States on the science of reading. Yes, we need to teach phonics, but that doesn't mean we have to drill how you say A 3,000 times without context, because A sounds different depending on the word it's in. Telling stories, wordplay, what rhymes with hack. Singing songs. Do you know this one? Ba 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 baran, ba 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 baran, ba baran. Nobody knows this here? Oh, okay, good, good. No one's singing along. That's phonics. You just did phonics. Reading product labels, engaging in conversations, and dramatic play is also wonderful for the foundations of literacy. Now, we could also get kids to play with spatial toys. Why? Why are blocks so good? Why is spatial tasks so important? Because spatial language and spatial play relate to later spatial ability and number, contemporaneous and future math ability, if you have a good sense of how magnitudes map on to distances. They also underline science, technology, engineering, and math, which I'm sure I don't have to convince anybody of. And these are the kinds of things we can enrich by giving children a goal. A review of all the papers on guided play. I like this paper a lot. Suggests that it works, and it works even better than free play or direct instruction. Why is that? Why is that? Maybe because it allows children to question. Maybe because it engages children more. Maybe because it gives them an opportunity to ask questions and disagree with what the adult is saying. There's so many possible reasons. We're working on this now. What is the nature of the agency that children obtain when we engage in playful learning as opposed to just talking to them? That's direct instruction. Or just giving them materials and saying, go play with this, you'll learn something, right? No. We have done a number of studies now where we know while free play is awesome and great, if you have a curricular goal, don't do free play. Too many degrees of freedom. The kid has to figure out what the hell you want him to learn, and they don't always do it. because it's too vague. Play allows us to develop this suite of skills, and notice that this chart has 4 levels for each skill. It's really interesting. In the United States, I think we have a crisis in critical thinking. I am not going to get into politics, but use your imagination. At the first level, which is what a lot of young kids do, seeing is believing. So mommy is crying, she must be sad, but she's crying because her brother just got engaged. But she's crying, right? They can't go beyond seeing is believing. Then children come to understand that truths differ, that you might believe something, I might believe something else. And then as adults, we get to opinions. I do this too. We can't find evidence for everything we want to talk about. So we say things like, they say that COVID is returning. Okay, who's they, right? We all do this. And finally, we get to where we will not believe something without evidence. Obviously, it's not important for everything we do in our lives, but if we want to develop critical thinkers for our democracy, which is going down the tubes in America, we will want to work more on critical thinking. All of these can be scaled by you, for the children in your class, for your institution. You can think about your own department or college and think about how well it communicates with its members, how much it encourages creative innovation of practices, right? This is useful to us in many ways. Okay, now we're going to talk about how we can foster play for school readiness. I don't see any sleepers yet. This is very exciting. Okay. This is the equation that we use for achieving our definition of success. You can't just go into communities and say, this is what you need. No. We take the community values into consideration. And we do that by asking them. Plus, we use the science of how children learn, and we use the science of what children need to learn to be successful in this crazy world. Once again, we can use this as the new report card for the 21st century. You can evaluate what you do in your college classes, in your preschool classes, anywhere. Are you employing these principles? They're not just for little kids, about how people learn best. And if you're following more of these principles than fewer of them, I can guarantee you learning will be more joyful. We can also create a report card using the science of what children need to learn. And we use this to rate individuals, ourselves, organizations, even in our college classes. And we ask our students, what can you do to reach the next level once they do a self-evaluation? We're applying this model in and out of school environments, in the community with playful learning landscapes. Oh, God, I did it again. Come on, baby. Okay. With playful learning landscapes. And this is in media. It is an example of what we do in media. We've written about children's apps, and we've written about the metaverse. This is a website called Stories with Clever Hedgehog that I created with my Ukrainian friends, funded by the Jacobs Foundation, out of the University of Delaware, that has lots of material. This is before the Israeli war. We know there are many more wars going on in the around the globe. So I happened to be watching television and saw these Ukrainian kids who looked totally bereft and confused. They were sitting on suitcases, clutching a teddy bear. They had no idea where they were going. And I thought, what can I do? I can give money. Okay, everybody gives money. But what else can I do? So I decided, and the Jacobs Foundation went along, to create a website with ebooks and fun facts and games and music, things that can be downloaded so children don't only have to be on screens. It's totally in Ukrainian and it's totally in English. And if you would write down the URL, www.ebooksforukrainiankids.org, and share it, I would so appreciate it. I want to get as many eyes on it as I can. It's great for families who want their kids to learn English too. Okay. Ministries of education around the world are beginning to embrace the idea that there's a whole child being educated and not just a mass of brain cells between the ears. Ontario is a leader here. I told you I love Canada. The purpose of the program is to establish a strong foundation for learning in the early years, and to do so in a safe and caring, play-based environment that promotes the physical, social, emotional, and cognitive development of all children. I love Canada. And Professor Arthur Lee, who at one time was Secretary for Education and Manpower in Hong Kong, said, "Is it not better to put them in a happy environment where their curiosity would be kindled and where they would want to learn?" Brilliant man. So we have been doing this actively. We call the approach active play for learning, and we have preliminary findings from New Hampshire. The whole state of New Hampshire is using our approach in their kindergartens, from a school district in Michigan, from Pennsylvania. What we find when we put in active play for learning, of course, with the permission and desire of the people who run the school district and the teachers, we get teachers talking less and kids talking more. Sounds like, oh, that's no big deal. But we also get changes on standardized tests. They do better. Now, these are only preliminary findings, but LEGO has given us huge amount of money to go into 4 cities in the United States, 25 schools per school district with 3 teachers per grade per experimental school. I don't want to go through all the detail, but the idea is that we're in these 4 states and we're going to collect not just achievement data, but data on how the classroom is conducted and how things change in the classroom. When we have done this in Michigan, New Hampshire, Pennsylvania, the teachers have told us it is a boon. They love it because they can relinquish some of the hard control that they've been holding on to. In the United States, I don't know if this is true here, do you know that teachers are leaving the profession in droves? Why is that? Because they're not respected as professionals. It's a very difficult job. And they're told they have to be on page 10 on Tuesday or they're in trouble. Shouldn't be like that. In the community, we're also using our 3-part equation. Now, I wonder if you knew that children only spend 20% of their waking time in school. What are we doing with the other 80%? I hope we're not just sending them to after-school classes, which I think China does and Japan. Playful learning landscapes is our antidote. We ask and work with communities to put in installations for things that children need to know, and the parents and the children use these installations repeatedly. Go online, you'll see what I mean. It's a global phenomenon. We're transforming everyday spaces in cities and towns. Why not into child and family-friendly places? You got to spend money if you're in a municipality on a bus shelter anyway. Why not put games on it, like we're doing in Santa Ana, California? lots of people there from Mexico, they wanted loteria. We put it in, okay? There's no reason why you can't have those four-sided puzzles, why you can't have number game, all kinds of stuff. And whatever the community is interested in is how we follow up and what we do. We use a community-paced, go-constructed design process because we have to know what kids are supposed to be like for the people in that community. What are the things that they value for their children? Then we test the process using science and evaluate the outcomes. So we have now quite a number of papers about how these installations in the real world work. I only have time to tell you about one of them, the supermarket study. Okay. Language development is the main thing that I do. In the United States, we know that there are children who have vast vocabularies at the age of 3 and children who have very small ones. We also know that the size of the vocabulary you have at age 3 predicts out the vocabulary you have in high school. We know this, okay? How can we increase the amount of language children are exposed to directly, not from TV or radio? How can we increase the amount of language children have? So we went into supermarkets in middle class and low income communities. And we hung up signs. We've also done this in South Africa. Did you know when we talk and read and sing, we're helping our children get ready for life? And we have a picture of a cow in front of the milk and all this stuff. Nobody says to the parent, talk to your child about these signs. Nobody. But what happens when these signs are up in supermarkets? First of all, you need to know that we compared when signs are up and when signs are down in supermarkets that served middle class as well as under-resourced areas. Results showed a 33% increase in the caregiver child language that occurred in the walls of that supermarket. Why? That's a huge number. We never get numbers like that because the kids must have noticed the signs, or the parents. We don't have the details because we couldn't follow people that closely. It was creepy. And this is amazing. Also, we've been replicated using STEM signage and in laundromats and in food pantries. So this is an easy thing to do. So what is the bottom line here? We can enhance learning everywhere. Stop thinking just about within the school walls. Everywhere by using our simple equation. Paying attention to people's cultural values, working with them, the science of how children learn, and what children need to learn. So is it a pipe dream to transform education? No. Will you join us? Not with a pipe, yuck, but with efforts to bring playful learning into classrooms and communities, with communities, children, and teachers? I leave you with that question. Thank you. Tomatoes, whatever you got. Hi.
Hi. Excellent talk, excellent work. It's fantastic. I am very curious about the content aspect and would like to hear your thoughts on, when you said content, I thought it was going to be content in the sense that it would have some sort of guidance or provide some sort of guidance in terms of like what we actually would be teaching, what they're going to learn. And in particular, I wonder about what do you think is our responsibility, and I say our responsibility sort of in terms of our societal responsibility to foster, at one point you mentioned civic engagement, responsibility, social responsibility, sense of community. So I just wonder whether there's something beyond just expertise, but expertise in what areas? Do you have some thoughts about what are some of the areas or topics that we should want our kids to develop an expertise in?
So we ask communities what they want, but more importantly, content is king. I mean, you got to know the multiplication tables, right? But you can have fun learning them. You have to know your history, but you can have fun learning that. The 6 C's incorporate all the kinds of positive behaviors we want our children to have. Think about what collaboration takes. You have to have a theory of mind. How are you going to collaborate with someone if you just say, oh, that's a stupid idea? You're not going to be very popular, right? So you have to have a theory of mind. You have to be able to take the perspective of others in order to engage in communication. You have to know collaboration. You have to know from communication how to make a persuasive argument, how to write, and how to listen. We're pushing for all positive social behaviors in our 6 C's. And whenever we do presentations, people suggest other C's. And we had to make selections after reviewing the literature. But for example, community. Community goes into collaboration and communication, and also into creative innovation if you think of ways to make your community better that you and others can bring to the fore. So the whole thing is premised upon helping children learn the skills in school and out that will make them the kinds of responsible, capable, communicative, and empathic citizens that we want our kids to be. We are not just happy with training the white matter between the ears. We have a societal program here where children learn to be better humans as a result of the kinds of activities we offer them in the classroom and outside and in the home. It didn't make them happy.
Nope.
Okay.
I want to push you a little bit more.
Go ahead.
So, I mean, I can imagine a curriculum whose objective is to teach children that their race is better than other races. And so I guess when I ask about content, I'm still not satisfied because I think that your 6 C's can be used in ways to teach children to be harmful and injurious to other people. So that's what I really want to get at is how do we ensure that the 6 C's are implemented in ways that actually teach our children to be caring and kind and not harmful.
Goal. That's the goal. And no one who works with the 6 C's that we have encountered is interesting in teaching either white superiority or racial superiority. This would be not something that would be embraced by the community as a whole. The other thing is, with respect to content, we're for teaching all kinds of content, including true history, which would capture what is being denied now in the United States. Lots of information about slavery, which one of the governors in the United States referred to as a job training program. Yeah. So we're all for real things coming out as a result of this. However, when we go into schools with the IPL approach, we don't make comments on their content. Whatever curricula they use is up to them. What we are working on is instilling pedagogical approach that can work with all kinds of content. We are not there to push our values onto the people who are teaching children. That's a community thing. And I have to have faith in the communities that we work with, and it's happening around the world now, that this kind of disgusting stuff that you talk about will not be part of the program. But we cannot control the world. What we would like to see is this pedagogical approach be adopted for the benefit of teachers and for the benefit of children and for their future lives. Because this is a time not like any other time in the world. I'm sure I don't have to convince you of that. And the demands that we will have on our children are great and much greater than they were before when we had traditional societies. So using the 6 C's and the learning principles, we are eager to arm them with the possibilities for success, but not just a good job, success in their personal lives and the kinds of values that they bring into the world.
Well, Roberta, thank you very much for the inspiring talk.
Thank you.
Well, I'm not talking about content. I would like to talk about context,
Okay.
because I'm working, as you know, my research interest is also on play, and I just find that the kind of context, in Hong Kong, the frontline teachers actually, they do use guided play. Yeah. But then, to me, I can see that children are not find the kind of play so playful in classroom. Once when they see that there is, kind of external force them to do something. Okay, so this is the kind of issue in Hong Kong.
Yeah.
Can you give us some clue or suggestion as how we can use guided play in a more playful way?
Sure. If you use the word force, it ain't guided play. So it's up to teachers to figure out, and it's going to be by talking with kids what they're interested in to help them bring forth topics that they wish to have children learn about. And when teachers adopt a guided play approach, they actually have such conversations with children. Children contribute to how the curriculum is carried out. And they say what they like and what they don't like, and the teachers then try to think about how to bring that material and those experiences to students in a way that will engage them. If the word force is used, it means it's really not guided play. It's really chocolate-covered broccoli, And I think it's not that hard, like I showed with using the Lego blocks and with climbing up the pole. There's so many ways that we can interact with children that excite them and that make them want to learn. They want to learn. They come to us wanting to learn. So we have to think about, maybe we sing ba 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 baran, for phonics. We have to think about how to use the playful learning principles and rate what's going on in our classrooms. The teachers who use that when they are trying to force kids would notice that it's really not engaging, so it would be low. That it's really not active, so it would be low. So the idea is to appreciate what these learning principles are, what the 6 C's are, and what we're after. And of course, I can only give you the most superficial description at a talk like this. And then to rate what the activities are that they're doing and how they conform. It's really not that difficult. Yes.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
But it takes some training. It's not something you do overnight. And when we go into the school stars, we have coaches who are working with the teachers. The teachers want to learn this method. You can't force anybody.
Yeah, so I would like to continue. Because the Hong Kong government preschool guideline, asks the teachers to give children 30 minutes or 45 minutes free play in school, in the classroom. So teachers find it very difficult. As you mentioned just now, that free play, actually, it's better to use guided play.
If you have a curricular goal.
Yeah. So can we see it this way? this is my suggestion.
Yeah.
You know, in line with the government's guideline, can we see that the one you suggest, you know, just now, is a kind of pedagogies for teachers? And actually, from children's perspective, as we have, you know, mutual paper, saying that children need to see the kind of autonomy.
Yes.
They need to have agency.
Yes.
And they need to feel that there's no end. There isn't any kind of external means, external ends for them. Then they will feel it playful. So can we make it like the free play is from children's perspective?
It is.
Yeah, while the kind of things you mentioned, you know, like guided play, will be from teachers' perspective. And I think it will be easier for our local teachers to digest.
But it may take some training or for people to work together to read the materials and to really think about what fits, because you're not going to just do this overnight. That's why I think you have teachers who are engaging in forcing. So I want to say the opposite of what I think is happening in Hong Kong is happening in Norway, real quick. I don't know what you call me, adjunct professor or something at the University of Stavanger in Norway. And they have what they call creches, which children go to from when they're very little. And they have recently changed their requirements because they found that teachers spend vanishing little time with children. Okay? Now, kids want to learn. And by the time they get to 5, they really want to learn. And the way that it works in Norway is that the teachers are having coffee and the kids are doing a lot of free play. So I'm helping them try to think about ways to modify what happens there, because I want to build on, as you would too, what it is children want to learn. I don't want them to have to wait till they go to school if they want to learn sooner. And most kids want to learn. So there's all free play there, and in probably some other Scandinavian countries, but I can't speak to that authoritatively. And in Hong Kong, it may be that I remember your data from our study together, that there's more emphasis on assessment and learning than on having children gain the agency that they might wish for learning on their own.
Okay, thank you for the wonderful presentation, all this wonderful practice.
Yes.
And actually, as you said, you are preaching to the choir, because we know this for a long time.
Yes.
We have been working on this for a long time. We know this is the best way for young children to learn through play.
And for their teachers.
In all the documents in Hong Kong and curriculum documents. And but how we have been working on it for so long, and we can't agree less what you was telling us. But what is new that is going to make a difference? Because
Data. I would say you're absolutely right. Data makes the difference. If you can have children who do well on exams, I hesitate to say these things because Hong Kong is really a different place than the United States. But just try me. That if you had data that showed that kids who engaged in playful learning in their classrooms did just as well or better as kids who are learning in classrooms where they are engaged in lots of direct instruction, and as I fondly refer to it, drill and kill, and you could show, and then you have a PR issue, public relations, telling parents and practitioners that yes, we can think about children as whole people, and we can discover that they will learn just as well or better. In the work that we've done, we have found the gold standard in education is the word transfer. You know this word, transfer? It's where you take what you learn in one context and you can use it in a new context without prompting. Guided play helps children transfer. Free play does not, and direct instruction does not. This is a paper by Fisher, And we taught children about the properties of geometric forms, and there are other papers of this nature as well, but this one really hits it. And when we used direct instruction, the kids presented with brand new geometric forms that they had to decide were real or fake. You know, they did okay. The free play kids did not do well, and the kids who had been engaged in guided play, where they helped to discover with the teacher the properties of the geometric forms, did 40% more in the way of transfer to new forms that they hadn't seen. So if you have these data, I mean, look, we can just argue, we know this is best, it's not enough. We have to show it through scientific means. And we have to get people like you who are spokespeople for this and who can talk about the data and who can reassure people that yes, we can have a rigorous curriculum. Yes, our children will learn content. They will absolutely learn content, and they may even learn it better if they have more agency and if they engage in guided play. It's not a simple answer because you want the data from your country too.
Thank you very much, Professor
Thank you.
Golinkoff, for the wonderful speech.